Art History for Baddies serves up art history's greatest hits in snackable episodes that won't put you to sleep. From Renaissance drama to modern art chaos, we break down the masterpieces, the scandals, and the artists who changed everything, minus the academic jargon. Perfect for your commute, your coffee break, or whenever you want to sound cultured without the commitment, because knowing your Caravaggio from your Kahlo should be fun, not homework. This is Art History for Baddies. Hey guys, and welcome to Art History for Baddies. Thanks for your patience for this new episode. I did start a podcast only to end up getting laryngitis after releasing just a couple episodes. The universe is funny like that. Anyways, this is Art History for Baddies, the podcast where we explore art and artifacts that shaped human history. I'm your whimsical and curious host, Mallory, with a fresh voice. This week we're diving into one of the most spectacular archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, one that's still revealing its secrets some 50 years later. We're talking about the Terracotta Army of China. 8,000 life-size clay soldiers that were buried underground for over 2,000 years, standing guard over an emperor's tomb. And here's the kicker. We still haven't opened the tomb itself, because among other reasons centered around preservation, according to the ancient texts, it's surrounded by rivers of Mercury. Yeah, Mercury. Let's dig in. March 1974. A group of farmers in Shanxi province, China, are digging a well. Then their shovels hit something hard. They keep digging and they find a head, a clay head. Then a body, again, a clay body. Then another. Then another. They stumble upon one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in recent history, the Terracotta Army of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. His name means First Emperor of Qin. He was the guy who unified China in 221 BCE. Before him, China was a bunch of warring states constantly fighting each other. He conquered them all, standardizing the currency, standardizing weights and measurements, standardizing the writing system, and started building the Great Wall. He was that guy. He was also apparently terrified of death. He became obsessed with immortality. He sent expeditions to find the elixir of life. He consumed mercury pills because he thought they'd make him live forever. Spoiler alert, they did not. They probably actually killed him. He died in 210 BCE at the age of 49, likely from mercury poisoning. But before he died, he spent decades preparing for the afterlife. He ordered the construction of a massive mausoleum complex. We're talking about 38 square miles. And to protect him in the afterlife, he commissioned an army. Not a living army, a clay one. A terracotta army, to be exact. Here's what we know so far. There are an estimated 8,000 terracotta soldiers buried in the 3 massive pits outside of the emperor's tomb. 8,000. And no two faces are alike. Each one is individually sculpted with unique features, expressions, and hairstyles. They're life-sized, about 6 feet tall on average. They originally held real bronze weapons, many of which were still sharp when archaeologists found them over 2,000 years later. The soldiers aren't alone. There are terracotta horses, about 670 of them, terracotta chariots, terracotta musicians, terracotta acrobats. There are even a separate pit of terracotta officials and what appears to be a command post. It's an entire military organization made from clay. And here's what's wild. When they were first made, they were painted. Bright reds, blues, and greens, and purples. And I want to just have a little side note that a lot of people also don't know that all of those ancient Greek sculptures also used to be painted, but we can cover that in a different episode. So we're talking about a full color army, but the paint was so fragile that when archaeologists first started excavating, the pigments would flake off within minutes of exposure to air. So most of what we see now is just the gray terracotta. But occasionally you'll see a photograph of a newly excavated warrior where you can still see traces of the original paint, and it is stunning. The craftsmanship is incredible. These were made in an assembly line fashion. Take that, Henry Ford. Bodies, heads, arms, and legs were created separately using molds, then assembled and customized. It was mass production, but with individual artistry. Very on brand for an emperor who unified China by standardizing everything. Now, the Terracotta Army is buried about a mile away from the emperor's actual tomb. We found the army, we've excavated it, we've studied it, but the tomb itself, we haven't touched. And this is where things get really interesting. According to an ancient Chinese historian writing about 100 years after the emperor's death, the tomb is a marvel. He wrote that the burial chamber contains a detailed map of the emperor's realm. The rivers and seas were recreated using flowing mercury. The ceiling was decorated with precious stones to represent the stars and heavenly bodies. There were crossbows rigged to automatically fire at anyone who tried to enter. Some real Indiana Jones shit. Essentially, it was the world's first booby-trapped tomb. For a long time, people thought that this was just a legend, or exaggeration, or ancient storytelling. But then scientists did soil testing around the tomb mound, and they found mercury. A lot of mercury. Way more mercury than should naturally occur in soil. The readings were completely off the charts, so either this historian was telling the truth, or there's some other explanation for why there's an insane amount of mercury in the ground around the emperor's tomb, or there might actually be literal rivers of mercury down there. What we know for sure is that the tomb mound itself is huge. It's about 250 feet tall. It looks like a small hill, which is why it went undiscovered for so long. Ground-penetrating radar and other remote sensing technology have confirmed that it's a large underground palace beneath it. We know it's there. We can see the outline of it. We just haven't opened it. But why not? Why haven't we gotten down there? Why not? A few reasons. First, technology. When archaeologists first started excavating the terracotta warriors in the 1970s, they didn't have the technology to preserve the paint. It just disintegrated. Now imagine opening a tomb that's been sealed for over 2,000 years. Whatever's inside, if anything survived, could be incredibly fragile, and one wrong move and you are destroying priceless artifacts that have been preserved for a millennia. Second, if there really are rivers of mercury down there, that's a health hazard. Mercury vapor is super toxic. Opening the tomb could release it and endanger anybody involved. Third, there's a cultural respect element. This is still considered a sacred burial site. Some people argue that we should at least leave it alone out of respect for the dead. And fourth, why rush? The tomb is not going anywhere. Better to wait until we have the technology to do it right than to destroy everything to satisfy our curiosity. There's a lot that we also do not know. We don't know if the rivers of mercury are real, or if they're metaphorical, or if they've evaporated or seeped away after 2 millennia. We don't know if the emperor's body is still there, or if it's been preserved, or if it's just dust by now. We don't know if the treasures described in the ancient texts, like jade suits and gold and precious artifacts, actually exist, or if they were already looted centuries ago. It's entirely possible people have already broken into the tomb in the last millennia or two and ransacked the place. It's possible booby traps worked and kept everyone out. We just don't know. We don't even know if the booby traps were real. We don't know if the ceiling really has stars made out of pearls or precious stones, and we don't know if there's writing inside that could tell us more about the Qin dynasty. We don't know if opening it would be the greatest archaeological discovery of the century, or if it would just be a huge disappointment. Will we ever know? Probably. Eventually. One day. Someday the decision will be made to excavate it carefully, documenting everything, preserving everything, and finally answering the questions we've been asking for 50 years. But here's the thing. Sometimes the mystery is part of the appeal. The Terracotta Army is already one of the most significant archaeological finds in history, and we've barely scratched the surface of the entire complex. There's sections we still haven't excavated. There are pits that haven't been opened. Every time they dig, they find something new. Just a few years ago, they found evidence that the terracotta figures were made by government laborers whose names were inscribed in the pieces, a kind of quality control system. It reminds me of when you buy something from Lush, and on the little package, there's a sticker that's like, "Joe made this with love." That's a detail that changes our understanding of how the whole thing is organized. So maybe we don't need to open the tomb right now. Maybe it's okay if it's kept a secret just a little bit longer, or maybe a lot bit longer. The Terracotta Army stands as a testament to one man's fear of death and a desire for immortality. Ironically, he's been dead over 2,000 years, but his clay soldiers are still standing guard, still being discovered, still revealing new secrets. And somewhere beneath that hill in Shenxi province, there might be rivers of mercury flowing through a recreation of ancient China. But maybe we should skip that particular lazy river ride. That's it for this episode of Art History for Baddies. Until next time, stay curious and maybe stay away from Mercury.